I'm doing a little work in the shop. Had a rusty corner to cut out and patch that was sitting in there, so just got that done. And now I cleaned up the lift bay, and it's time to deal with this. I've been putting this off for about a year. Drove this guy to work the last couple days, and it's time just to do what I've been avoiding. I've been having overheat issues ever since I put this motor in, and they've been kind of weird overheat issues, and I'm almost 100% convinced that I have head gaskets leaking where the exhaust is getting into the cooling system. Just driving it home today, and I could go 60-ish low throttle and just cruise, and my temperatures are 205-ish, and on those motors isn't horrible. That was also 90 some degrees outside with the AC on. And if you ever accelerate or drive hard or seem to cruise hard, or when you put your throttle into it, it just overheats quickly. Even in idle, you can put it in a garage and let it run, but as soon as you sit and rev it up, as you rev it up, you can watch the temperature gauge just go. And I build a ton of pressure on the radiator. The cooling system gets really high pressure and builds a ton of pressure anytime you rev up the engine. And so driving home at 60-ish, it was running okay. And my wife was in front of me in her car, and just for fun, I changed lanes and stood on it. Passed her, came over, and in those few seconds of acceleration over and back, it was at 244 degrees in a matter of a second or two in just that acceleration. So I'm done driving it until we get the heads off. So I've got head gaskets sitting on the shelf. I even have a new water pump. I've just been trying everything but that, just hoping that that good used engine wasn't the problem, but it is. So we can pull this guy in and have fun with that. So we'll turn on our keys, turn down our fan, and put her in, put it on the lift. And that way I can lift it up, get the manifolds taken off, which the headers on this are an absolute pain in the ass. So getting the headers off is going to be all sorts of no fun. Taking all the top end off and doing that. So it'll be an hour or two after work, come out, dink on it, and all that fun stuff. So I will work on that. I've got some engine mounts for Mr. Ford over there. So we'll get those, throw them on the shelf so they're ready to mock in. I've got that motor kind of ready to go. We can show some of that, I suppose. We've got how do I do pulling this in? Oh, I'm a little far forward. I need to push it back just a taste. But this big old fat beast, these headers are pretty much hitting the frame over here. I've got a fancy 2x4 old brake pad and angle bracket holding that side of the engine up. This side just has a little piece of bracket holding it in. My exhaust manifold's hitting over there. So I could probably come back, a little ways more. I could probably come down a little bit more. I'm coming into the trans tunnel over here. So I've got a friend that's making me some mounts and fabbing up some brackets so that we can get this fitted properly. And we'll get this in there. But between dinking on the door, playing on this, I'm going to start pulling that apart, and that'll be all sorts of fun. I also thought it was very funny, the head gaskets for this motor, there's a left and a right, obviously, and they are different. And they are different cost. They're like $15 more for the right than the left, which, to be honest, I find that entertaining. So I should be able to do everything with just the hood on and be bent over. The other nice part about having it on the lift, I'll be able to lift this up, and now it's a neutral. I can push it. Come on, back up. Back up. Right there. That's my center. But I can lift this up so I don't have to be bent over so much pulling the top of the engine off. But we'll pull the intake, pull everything off. I'll show some of the process there as it goes along. It has to, when at this point it 100% has to be that. I tried that whole little gasket thing that you put on here and then run it, and it doesn't seem to do it at idle. It only does it when you're revved up. So when you rev up, it's a tiny enough gap in those gaskets. There's layers in those gaskets, and it must be split enough that as you rev up and build head pressure, it blows in. And this hose will get crazy hard. I had only this little overflow bottle, and I kept blowing this, and it overblow, and it just, so I thought I was running out of fluid. So I now have a pressure tank bottle here, and then from here, this overflows into this bottle so that I know there's no way it's sucking air or ever sucking down and coming back up kind of thing. But it's not coolant. It's not an air pocket. It's not water flow. It's not the radiator. I can have the air conditioner on in the garage idling and revving, running, and will not heat up at all. As soon as you rev it up and start giving it some RPM, temperature gauge just pegs out. So we'll get the gaskets in. We'll pull this apart. I'll show quick little skippets of it. And hopefully when we take it for a drive after that, it'll be fixed and it'll be worth all the problems, because I have been fighting it for about a year. It runs so good. It drives so great. It's slow speeds. In town, it'll just rip and pass everybody and have all sorts of fun. But you get on down the highway, if you just idle in or just really soft on the throttle at 65-ish, it runs just fine. You put your leg in it and start pushing it and revving it up a little bit, the temperature gauge just starts to climb. And it climbs fast when you put your throttle in it. So let's close the door and put this in. And I'll get her on the lift, get her up, and play with the headers after it cools down, because it's still warm. Now that she's up, just a little recap of some funness. We have our lovely headers that have about as much no room as possible. This side's decent. I can actually get my hand in here. There is a Torx bolt up in there. Another one under, you can get my fingers underneath between the motor mount and that, and there's like some wobblies and stuff. I can probably get this one loose. I don't think I need to take the exhaust completely off. I can get it to fall back enough for the head to go up. This side, on the other hand, we have a heat shield and a starter that has to get out of the way to get to most all the bolts in here. So we're going to pull all them, and so we'll start that way. So I'm going to start taking a bunch of stuff off and using a bunch of foul language, and I'll tell you what I see here in a few minutes. Well, we got the starter out. I can actually get a ratchet on this bolt. So that one's kind of easy. Stupid part is I should save that one for last. I think I'm going to get that one really loose, then fight all these other bottom bolts, and then take that one off since I can get a ratchet on it. That's a good idea. Thanks for telling me. what would I do without you guys? Thanks for the suggestion. The one that's way up on top there, that one's going to be a nightmare. Well, I got all the bolts out, the header pulling loose, and I don't know if I want to take it as a win, but the gasket seems to be stuck hard against the header and is completely let go of the head. So I think as the head comes up, I can just leave that there and hopefully don't have to re-gasket or change any of that. So small win, fingers are cramped and that hurts. I'm also thinking I'm going to invest in some 10 millimeter or millimeter angle wrenches, the ones that pivot on the back in here. I've got 100 different size ratchety wrenches and every flipping size known to man. I need to get these off of this door. Don't use a door for a tool spot, you dummy. You're trying to do body work and trying to prep a box using a door. Move that so we can keep it clean. I got all those wrenches and I still can't get my fingers in all the spots. All right, 50% of the header's done. I think this side's easier. Except for, I don't even know how to get. No, yeah. More cussing. Well, don't be fast forwarding through the video. You miss all the excitement. Like where you ratchet your wrench all the way till the end of it hits the pipe. And now you can't get the ratchet out any further because it's against the pipe. So now my wrench is stuck there. And then I have to get the Torx or the other sock bolt outs that aren't there. So once I get that bolt out, then the headers will move back and then hopefully I can get my wrench off. See, exciting. Headers are awesome. I really wish I could have got the manifolds to work, but anywho's, bolt. I win. Ha 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 ha. Stupid ass bolt. Headers are officially loose. Oh, here's the other thing. So a knock sensor that goes right there, and the bolt is up against the header. So you need to take the knock sensor out to get to the bolt that's up in here, but you can't get the bolt out of the knock sensor because the bolt hits the pipe and yeah, whatever. Enough bitching. The exhaust is now off so I can lower the car. I threw a little ratchet strap back here so that the exhaust is supported because pretty much the headers were supporting the front section. So yeah, yippee skippy. So anyone watching this for the how to change a head gasket, one thing you do have to do is drain your fluids. So, or not all your fluids, but drain your antifreeze. So I've got that put in here. I got a nice clean bucket, so I'm hoping to reusing this. I put a piece of tin here to catch it from hitting that way. Here in a second, I will pop the radiator cap. Once I put air pressure or air to it, that will flow like crazy and make a big mess. Or hopefully the piece of tin will keep it from making a big mess. Look at her flow. Yeah, it splatters a little bit, but not too bad. Cleaning my mess, I'm cleaning my mess, I'm cleaning my mess. It's still splattering. But not too bad. Now with the car about a foot or two off the ground, my lengthy butt can actually work on it. I actually don't have good fender skirts, so I like to take just clean towels that I wash the cars and everything else with and put them out over the fenders. That way I know there's no dust and dirt. The problem with a lot of fender skirts, you use them on one car, you take them out, use them one time, and then they sit in the shop, they get a little bit of dust and gravel on it. And then as you work on your car, you sit here and bend over and work over your fender, and then you have a nice piece of sandpaper that you're freshly working on. So we will just throw some towels on her. That way it stays nice and protected. And I won't be as aggressive with sitting tools and things on it, even though it seems to be the thing you want to do, is to lean over and use your fender to set stuff on. I'll throw another one on this front edge. But then things that we're going to have to work on in here, because the newer vehicle now has power steering. The power steering pump bolts to the head. We do have to pull your belt, get the belt off, get the power steering pump taken off because it's bolted to that front head, and then pull our air cleaner, pull our little covers, which I think I just used the factory rubbers on those. Yep. And that goes over there. But anywho's, you know, we'll pull the fuel rail, pull the intake off, pull all the coils, pull the packs, pull the valve covers, and unbolt, 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 unbolt. I think from up here it's not the end of the world. So I'll just start pulling some bolts and seeing what we got. I'm starting this kind of late Friday night after work. It's already about 10 o'clock at night, so this is about as far as I'm going to get tonight. I have the headers off, so I'll actually sleep pretty decent tonight with that process. The dipstick is floating because it's not mounted in there. I'm kind of concerned about my brake booster, how close I am to the head here. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to take this off. Maybe I can just loosen it here and get it just to flop out of the way off the booster. I really don't want to be disconnecting lines and having to bleed brakes and all that kind of fun stuff. So one thing at a time. But the 6.4 is getting new head gaskets. And I hope to gosh, when I pull it apart, it's obvious and we can see which one it is and be like, yes, that is the bad head gasket. If not, I hope when we get done, we bolt this together, I take it for a test drive, and it's like, yes, it had a massive problem, and now it's gone. And I'm really looking forward to putting this thing on the interstate, taking it on some road trips. She's a monster. It's so much fun to drive. It's just been very upsetting. I really can't get it over 60 miles an hour without it getting hot. You know, I've legged it and pegged it and taken off and saying what top speed will do, but it's, you know, only for a little bit, because then that temp gauge go woo. So yeah, like I said, we went every direction trying everything it could be other than the head gaskets. So I think I'm gonna close up for the night. Stay tuned for paused for you know the next video that'll be in like 2 seconds from this one. But I know you're fast forwarding and you're skipping and you're only playing a little bit of it, so it's all right. I understand. I'm boring. I'll try to be more entertaining, I promise. This one keeps laughing at me. But all right, see you in the morning. Okay, so I wanted to try one more thing before I called it a night, just because if you haven't figured this out yet, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm just taking things apart. And I pulled all the bolts off that intake. I pulled all the wires off of my injectors. I looked at the wires on the back for the heater hoses. Those go to these pipes that come across here. That's not part of this intake. The intake, I believe, is separate to the block that's right there. I'm going to just lightly lift on the intake here and see if it goes up. And if it lifts up, then, because I think it's just held in with like O-rings kind of thing. On the other motors I've pulled that have these plastic intakes, they're fairly simple. Let's see here. Can I set this down and just give her a lift? Or am I going to break something? Okay, so I can grab the intake and I can wiggle it side to side a few inches. But no going up. And I've got, you see up there, I've got a 6.1 intake that still has the injectors and the fuel rail and everything on it, and it just unbolted and lifted straight up. I've done a few 5.7s. I've done, well, there's a Coyote motor over there. It should just lift up. I don't know. Don't know what I'm doing wrong, Captain, but she won't go. I don't want to give it more power, or I might break the goddamn plastic piece of shit. Anyways, stand by. Okay, hear me out. It's late, and I might be a fucking idiot, but I missed a bolt. So, you know, it's just one bolt. What could one bolt have done? Hey! Look at that. It comes up. Let me use these two hands so I don't hurt the injectors and shit. By the way, everyone watching the video that wants to say, hey, you a dumbass? Go ahead, say it. Say it. Stop hurting my feelings. You guys are mean. So for all intents and purposes, yeah, there's the intake. So you need to take that bolt out there. Now, that bolt, if it's not out, it, yeah, it's going to hold the intake in. So there's that. Holes don't look too carboned and fouled up. Back to the actual head gasket problem is got to be a port going into the exhaust. So that is a thing. Like I said, I still have to get the power steering pump taken off of this side. So I'm going to take the belt off next and mess with that. But now it's even later than before. So, yeah, we'll keep doing what I got to do. And I'm going to call it a night. Come in the morning. So there I am. Pause again. Well, good morning, girls. We need to adjust your fuel pressure later today. I wish we were changing your head gaskets. They're substantially easier. Ain't got a couple bolts, and even these headers are easy to get on and off, but you're still a gem. We're over here today. It's Saturday morning. Cartoons are on, and we're back on it. So, first things, we're gonna pull our belt. Got my little belt tooly tool. Actually, that's one for a diesel. I need to grab the car one, 3/8. But anyways, pull the belt, pull the power steering, get to unbolting. We need to pull coil packs, pull plugs, pull the valve covers, pull the rockers, and we have our new valve covers or new gaskets over here. We have new bolts because these are kind of a stretch-on Torx spec on them. So there's a bunch of arguments of people, oh, you can re-torque them because you don't torque it to spec. You pull down to a certain weight and then you turn it to 90 degrees. And so even if the bolt has been stretched, you can still get that 90-degree pull. I agree with new bolts, and as much problems I've been having with this car, a couple dollars for some new bolts is no big deal. So let me get the right tool and we'll get tearing this apart. Now we got valve covers off. So you take coil packs and valve covers off. This one, as I was concerned, was very tight with this. I had a fight with the bolts, but I think I was able to get that off. I'm pretty positive the head will then come off pretty easily with everything that way. This side, actually, the wiring harness is such a tight fit. I really don't want to get into pulling more of the wiring underneath to get rid of this loom, but we'll see how that goes. But we do have to pull our rocker assembly, and there is a difference between the exhaust and the intake, and I'm kind of particular about wanting to make sure this all goes back on exactly right. I also weld, grind, and do everything in the shop, so it's not exactly the cleanest environment. So I set up a little clean table so that I can come over here and do exactly what needs to be done per side. and then I will lay everything out over there. The hard part that I get into as I'm looking at the car, you know, and we're standing here, this is my left hand, this is my right hand, but when you look at gaskets, these are very particular gaskets that go on this. We got to make sure that everything is on the side that it's supposed to go to. So if you label things, label it correctly. Driver's side is your left side, so make sure it's when you're facing that way. So this is your left side, this is your right side. And then I label stuff. You see I have a Sharpie laid out over here. So I'll write it on even on the paper, pull all that off, pull them, and then I'm going to make sure I put the exact push rods in the exact holes. I realize that all you have to have is the longer ones, and whichever ones are longer and whichever ones are shorter. I believe the bottoms are longer. I could totally be wrong. But back to, I just do it, so I do it my way. This is my way. Let's get these heads off and see if, or like the rocker assembly off, then we'll pull the heads and see if we can see an obvious gasket problem or where we're at. A little helpful hint, after the bolts are out, the head popped right off, lifted up actually pretty easily. I think that has to do with that like four-fold fender or gasket. Wouldn't come right up on the dang cooling line, so you have these cooling lines that go under the head or the intake. They are bolted back here on the back side of the head, so make sure you pull that bolt so it will lift up. And now that that's done, I should be able to lift this right up. I obviously need two hands for that, so let's pop that out. All right, so there's our head off, and you can see I'm going to need to sop up all that water so it doesn't get down. Obviously I'm going to have to do an oil change after all of this, but you know, your cooling passages are right through here, and so these four-piece gaskets are kind of hard to see. It's kind of hard to see, you know, where the leak was, if it was between the layers, because these gaskets are multiples, and it might not be this head, it might be the other head, but I just did want to inspect it. You know, this port here that has, you know, like these all look kind of clean. See how this one looks a little gunky? Maybe that was it. Maybe that was the line and it was coming across through there. Don't know for sure. You can see how after it's popped off, this has got some wetness from what came through here, so maybe that's where the antifreeze was. But these gaskets are 3 layers or 4 layers of material, so it literally could have been leaking between any of those layers also. So that's the unknown. Some of this is stuck really hard and others is peels right off, so there's that. But then we'll clean all this up and put all back together. I definitely want to do a little bit more heavy duty cleaning, wipe stuff out. You know, I don't know how we would definitely know the difference between these layers if I could find the leak. I wish I could just be like, have an obvious, but the amount of wetness between these layers, it's really hard for me to tell. But anyways, let's get the other side off and we'll make this one look like that side. And one other thing, there is a damn wiring harness that is clipped to the back of the head, to the harness that goes under all of this, all these plugs, and then it goes down. So you can't just unplug it, you got to get the little Christmas tree clips off and get it pulled off the back of that head. So there's something that you need to do before you pull the head off. If you're watching this for educational purposes, watch an idiot do it so you can do it the right way. Screwdriver. Okay, so both heads are completely off. We got all the water out of the cylinder walls. Even this cross hatching and things on the cylinders, they actually look really nice. So I'm happy with basically condition of block. And it's like the other head, we pulled it apart, and I'm, can't quite tell on the gasket if there's a bleed through, but like I said, it could go through multiple layers of this, so I don't have anything that's like obvious that was it other than what it was doing. There's a little bit of a lip and an edge in the adhesive from the old gasket, so we're going to wash and clean all that off. I like to use basically a wire wheel on a drill, and then we have to be very careful to get the so we don't get any of the broken wire pieces down in the engine anywhere or anything like that. I also use these light Scotch-Brites, but you want to still be very, very careful with the Scotch-Brites because you can still eat the aluminum and affect its height. So you definitely don't want to use like the sanding pestle that was on that, and you're definitely going to have leaks and you're going to have issues. So get a little more aggressive on the steel, but not very. We're going to be very flat with it, but I'm going to start cleaning, blowing it off, and let's get it all prepped up and clean. And yeah, then I'll show you the gaskets and why there's a left and a right and all that fun stuff. After just a little bit of cleaning, that's the one head. There's comparison of the other, getting all that residue and everything off, all that glue adhesive from the gasket. So start going after that one. Well, Freiberger's on a road trip talking about his cars. I'm still playing with this. So Mr. Gaskets over here, well, there's a brand called Mr. Gasket. These are Fel Pro gaskets. They are there is a right and a left. Right there we have a right. And right is going to be passenger side. And left is going to be driver's side. There is also a top and a bottom to them. So you do need to be very cautious of how they go on. You do need to be very careful with these. Don't just fling them around. This goes back to the nicer you are, the better you are with them. They do have a top, and they will say top and bottom. I believe they say top. Right there. There we go. There's our word top. So, and being that this is the left, this will go over here. We have our little pins lined up, and this guy goes right like that. So you notice how these have some block off holes and things in that spot, and this over here, there's no gasket material or silicones or anything you want to put on these. You just need to make sure you're super clean. And see how I had to kind of push that around that pin because they kind of get hung up on it. Those pins are what really hold it into place. And as I say that, as it falls off. So you just need to, let's see how it all flexes and wiggles, and then it pops back up. You just got to be super gentle when you have the head coming back down to make sure the gasket stays in place. And then what's even way more crucial is our torque specs and the type of bolts that you put in there. These are, there's a term for it, I don't remember what it is, but once you pull it down to a certain torque, you do 25 pounds and 70 pounds, and then you back them off and then torque it back to 70 pounds, and then you go 90-degree torque angle and a 90-degree torque angle to every one. So very involving torque specs to these heads. So make sure you read the directions and follow that very carefully. Don't go off of exactly what I'm doing, but that is where we're at with it. I also put a tiny bit of lube on my threads and the washer and head of the bolts, and I'm also using new bolts. So we do have brand new bolts here to put in, and so they're stretched to fit and things that direction. Matter of fact, I'm pretty positive these are the wrong bolts. I might have to make a run to town because those are completely different size. So we will be calling the parts store here in a second and getting the right bolts. That's a bummer. Yeah, those are completely wrong. Awesome! Alright. Shut it off. Let's grab these right parts, or wrong parts. And let's visit our little store and get the right ones. The speed limit 70, Farmer Bob. I got stuff to do. Putting on down the road, we're just putting on down the road. That pedal on the left, push down on it. Come on. Well, you know, that's what a trip to, into town, pick up parts, drive all the way back. Farmer Bob has to slow my ass down. I would pass you, but I'm turning up here in a few minutes. So, thanks for that. Okie dokies. So, while at O'Reilly's, I'm going to have to... Hey, girls. What do you think of that? That's pretty cool for a back seat, huh? All right. I have oil at the shop, but I'm going to have to change it anyway, so the oil I have I might as well keep for the next, so I grabbed an oil and filter. And we have the right bolts. Let's see what this does. Now, as much as I want to complain about my parts guy giving me the wrong parts, I'm actually going to throw this complaint out to, hey, yo people that figure out the part numbers here. The part number for this box is 72200. The part number that I had was 72020. So it was literally just one more 2, one less 0, and it is a GM. And it's actually said GM right here and had the size number on it. So, honest mistake. Kid grabbed the wrong one. It is what it is. So, let's get back to the fun. And now that we have the right bolts, back to some things that I do. Now, these are blind holes. So, if you have debris or anything down in your holes, the threads can bottom out and they can actually affect your torque specs and how it will torque, which you don't want that. The other thing is the washer and bolt of your bolts, look at this mess we have over here, can bind. And so you can get binding happening between the threads and these bolts as it starts to tighten down or gull. So I do put just a tiny bit of engine oil on the threads and between the washers before I put the bolts in, so that I get true torque specs pulling down against it. That's how I do it. So back to, I might not be the right guy, but that's how I do it. So I'm going to take a little bit of oil here and I'm going to lube them down. The other argument of, because these aren't torqued to spec, you torque them down and then you go another 90-degree angle to pull them down, that you could use the old bolts and you don't need to replace them. The new bolts do stretch, and or the old bolts do stretch. So I've been fighting so many problems with this, trying to figure out the situation. I am just going to change and I am going to put new bolts in, because why not? So I'm going to very carefully set that head on that gasket without having, without affecting the gasket. I got to be very, very gentle with it. So let's put the phone down and go from there. Got her set on. I also got that stupid clip in the back attached. So I'm going to put these top ones in just for alignment purposes and get them started. And then we'll go from the tops. I do need to wipe that off one more time. I had it flipped upside down. I want to make sure that we clean that inside really well. So that will be done here in a second too. All right, I have the heads all in. I have the bolts snug. I do not have them torqued yet. They're just ran down basically with just the electric ratchet till they just kind of put some tension on it. These are torque to yield, so that's where you're stretching those out. First set on the torque wrench is 40, so we're going to be 40 on all of the big ones and like 25 on the big. You want to start in the center and work your way out, so do the top center, bottom center, and then kind of work your way in a circle. Go the other bottom, center, top, and then come over here and then do your outer 4 that way. Now, after I do 40 foot-pounds all the way around, I go back and I do my 40 again, because you'll find the center 2 almost every time will be loose. So give them another, make sure they're down to 40. After that, do 90. So then you do 90 pounds all the way around, and I also come back and I double check the 90 all the way around. And then the torque to yield is you have to do an exact 90-degree turn. So you put your wrench on, find exactly 90 degrees, and you turn it. Now they make a special torque wrench to find 90, and so it's a angle finding torque wrench. I don't have that, so it's basically put the torque wrench in a specific area, kind of find it, and you can pull it to, where it needs to be. That's also the reason for lubing the nuts and washer, or the washers underneath these bolts, so that this bolt doesn't gull against the head and bind up. You want it to spin smooth to give you that stretch. You're literally stretching the threads and pulling this down. I do not want to do this again. I do not want a head gasket leak. I don't want any of these problems. So I want to make sure we go step by step through it. Some specs will actually tell you to torque it to 40, back them all off, torque it back to the 90 foot-pounds. That way you've kind of given it a set so you don't have any kind of oils or anything down in those holes. So if you torque it down to 90, torque them all down to 90, back them off a quarter of a turn, retorque to 90, and then do your 90-degree torque to spec. That's not a bad way to go in too. You pull it down, you back it off. You're not torquing it to full spec when you back it off. You do that in the middle section. I don't think I'm going to back these off. I'm going to do the 40, 40 twice, 90 twice, and then go to my 90-degree torque to spec. So use both hands, use my wrench, let's get them torqued. Like I was saying, I like to double torque. I already did the 40s. I came back to the center 2, and each of the center 2 took about a quarter of a turn to click off 40, because once you went there and then out, those kind of became loose because the way it crushes down that gasket. Now I will do my top little bolts for its first setting, and then we'll go to the 90 and do 90 all the way around. So putting the rockers in, like we said, we put on the plate, we made very specifically to know which push rods were where, so we put them in the exact same holes. So now we're over here doing this side, and you take a rag and you clean off and you put these in. When you put your rockers in, you really want to make sure you push them in and like feel around and push, and you can almost feel it like click or pop in to the push, or the valve inside, or not the valve, push rod inside. So, or the lifter, Jesus. Anywho's, yes, but the tops are actually not too bad. You can put them on the bottoms aren't too bad because you can line up the pins and work with that. The tops, you really have to fight with getting the push rod in the cup and get it right as you tighten these down and not have one off. I had that one off 2 or 3 times. Really have to take your time doing this. Make sure you get those seated just perfect and work them. Once you get them completely seated, you really should put a wrench on the engine and turn it over and make sure everything moves smoothly, or you could have catastrophic problems once you fire it up. So it took me a lot to get these 3 lined up. I couldn't get the rod to fall in the pin because the rods like to fall away. They have to be kind of lifting up and get into that cup just in the right position. Of course, I go through the heavy description of how difficult it is and what you have to do. This side just popped right on. Put it in, put the bolts in. All the cups fell right into place. All the lifters fell right into place. Pop, pop, bang. it's actually perfect. So not going to complain when something goes smoothly, because not a lot of things has been. We got the valve covers, the coil packs. Coil packs are tight, wires pulled up out of the way. Took the air gun, blew out that center area, make sure it's clean, made sure nothing got down in our holes, blew out our intake holes, wiped those all off clean, cleaned off our intake up here, slam it on. All right, well, there we have it. The entire top side is back together. All the clips, all the pins, all the bings. I do need to go through and put some zippy ties on. I put like a zip tie on that wire so it can't get into the belts. I also, version 1 of me being an idiot, putting the wiring harness on multiple times, I broke a couple of these stupid clips that hold the coil packs on, so I put a little zip tie around that, keeping those tight. So that needs to be done. But I'm going to lift her up and start on the headers. I'm going to go inside, eat some lunch for a little bit. But I'll jack up and start fighting those. I'm not looking forward to that at all, but that's that's huge. And we'll put some fluids in it. I think I'll put antifreeze in it. I'll probably drive it and get it, or not drive it, but run it, get the engine hot. Once it's hot and I bleed the antifreeze off, then I'll drop the oil, and then I'll change the filter so any kind of crud and anything in there can get mixed into the old filter, things that way, and I'll get that changed after I run it and bleed the antifreeze off. So I'm going to go eat some lunch, then work on the headers. All right, we fired it up, got her good and hot so we can bleed the water out. I'm now draining the oil. Got a little bit of a drip happening. We'll put fresh oil, fresh filter in it, and I'll fire it up, put it out in the driveway, let it idle for a while, get good and hot, and then let's take it out on the interstate and see if I can finally open this thing up. Yay, that is a really strong magnet that comes with this pan. The magnet's so strong you can hardly start the threads. Okie dokie, oil change is done. A mess on top of a mess on top of a mess. Let's fire it up, pull it outside, let it idle and steam off the crap that's in it. It never would overheat, it would never overheat idling. I could turn on the air conditioner, set it outside, and let it idle. Then it wouldn't overheat. But as soon as you rev it up, I could sit in a parked position revving it up. And as you revved it up, it would overheat. So let's open our door, turn on the key. I actually had the heat on, blowing water through the heater core, trying to air that out. All right, let's let it sit here. Skies are a little black. Hope we don't get a thunderhead. Let it run. I'm going to leave the heater core on, let it pump some heat in here. I am going to turn on my blower fans just so the fans are running. Actually, I'm going to leave the fans off, let them auto come on. Let's go mop up the shop floor. Let this sit here and idle for a few minutes. Alright, I now have the AC on, the compressor's on, and the fans are on. I dumped a bunch of soapy water all over the engine bay, just trying to wash the oil and antifreeze and everything off of it. It's sitting here idling. It was at like 160. I think we're up to 200 right now with the AC on. It's blowing nice and cold. We're also 90 something right now, so I'm going to rev it up a little bit. Same thing. So now we're up to 220. If I go to an idle and slow down and let it idle, it'll probably cool right off. Well, that's discouraging, but I'm still going to take it for a drive and see. Because even idling, and that's with AC on and running, my radiator cap's tight, but not as tight as it used to be. That would get so tight I couldn't squeeze it. I am crazy hot up there. That could just be temperature. Let's see what it does when I run down the road. Like I said before, I got hot running down the road. Slowed back down. I now have the AC turned off, and I have the heat on in the cab. I'll roll the windows up so you hear me. I had to slow down. It did cool down to 220, but she climbed right on up to 240 when I was doing over 80. So all that work for nothing. So anyone that wants to tell me why this thing's overheating on acceleration, the only thing I did not do was change the water pump. I have a new one on the shelf. I guess I'm doing that next just to see what it might do, but that is discouraging. Like, no one's, that's very discouraging. Well, this is majorly discouraging. So basically, 12 hours of back braking, finger pinching, thumb slicing work and money for head gaskets and bolts and everything else, and I have zero gain. It's doing the exact same thing it was doing. The exact same thing it was doing when it's been first put in. I don't understand it. I do have a new water pump, so I'm going to let it cool down. I'm going to throw a water pump in it tonight. I have circulation. The water's circulating. I put a spring in the lower hose. I thought originally it was sucking the hose closed. I've done the pressure tank. I've done the secondary bypass. I've done a bigger radiator cap. This is a $800 radiator. I've got dual fans. Yeah, I don't get it. I've changed the thermostat 2 or 3 different times. So I'm going to let it cool down. I'm going to throw a water pump in it. And I don't think that's going to do anything, but we'll just do that and see. Okay, so I just pulled the water pump because I had one. And I was going to do it when I did the heads just for that, but I wanted to verify one thing to the next. I didn't want to go through all that and be like, hey, maybe it was the water pump. But this water pump, I was just trying to see if the propeller here is, like, if I grip this and spin this, what I was thinking, and I've been, some people say it can happen, is if where the belt turns, at idle, it's like spinning, but at high RPM, this ends up being kind of loose, so it doesn't spin enough water. That's not the case. This is rigid and hard. It's connected as hard as you can to the that pulley, so it's moving the water just as well as it can. So that water pump is absolutely fine. There's no problems with it. I am going to be putting this, so I am pretty much going in there. No reason to show me putting that back in, but I'm going to put the new water pump in it. And I'm now at a loss. So if anyone knows anything, have any ideas, why is this thing overheating? We've pushed the air out of the system. I've changed thermostats 2 or 3 times. This is a tri-flow Griffin radiator. It's got high amp fans. I'm going brain dead on the brand fans. They're the most CFM, highest amperage fans you can have for this radiator. At idle with air conditioner on and just the fans, it will not overheat. When you're giving it throttle and you're revving it up, it overheats. It's got to be a timing thing or something. I don't know. I took my little computer, plugged into it, but I can't tell what the map is or what it's at. That's the only thing I can think of at this point, that it's like a timing issue at higher RPMs. But yeah, it can't get over 60. You go over 60 and it just overheats. You put your foot to the floor and like accelerate hard and fast, and it just gets hot, 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 hot. So I guess I'll post it at that point. There's a little bit of a how-to to tear the engine apart if someone wanted to see that. So that's pulling the engine apart. That's, a little bit of education there, but basically this is a big fail. I'll button it back up. I'll clean up my mess. This was a long, painful Saturday, and the hot rod is definitely hot, but far from a rod. Or maybe it's just a rod, or I don't, Peace out. I'm done with this. Okay, quick little end to this before I go any further. I have just went for another drive. I don't know if it's that thermostat at the very top edge. This guy's the one on my, and that's crazy hot. Well, matter of fact, so my temperature switch for my fans is at the bottom of the radiator. The bottom of the radiator is cold, and they just came on, and the fan switches come on at like, I think 130, 140. So I think part of the issue is that thermostat, but I was blowing water out before. I've also changed to a 20-pound cap. I put a 20-pound cap on it. I've been burping it. I've even air purged it, put air pressure to it to pressurize my cooling system. Took it for a drive, but still cruising down the road, that temperature gauge, like right now it's reading 222, and it was pushing about 230 running down the road at 80 miles an hour just now. As soon as I took my leg out of it and just slowed down a little bit, it dropped down to about 215, 220. But my fans would only run if I had the switch on. If I had them on manual, they weren't coming on, which tells me the bottom of the radiator is cold. See, the fans just turned off. If the fans are turning off, that means that the radiator is cold and it's doing its job. Why is it? I just went to see if my digital Aquastat thermostat reads differently, but now it's down to 218. Am I just panicked over something that's not wrong? I'm ending it there. I don't know if it's a failure or a somewhat success. Maybe if what I did was not necessary, but by doing everything else, I don't know. I did plug in my diagnostics tool to it, trying to read the readings, but honestly, I don't even understand any of that stuff, so I don't know what it means when it tells me O2 sensors are doing something and something else is doing something. So I'd like to get this figured out so I can start buttoning up wiring, cleaning up stuff, putting things in loom, and getting it right. So if you know anything, or if you have any ideas, have any suggestions. I just couldn't go to bed till I did a couple more tests. But that's where it's at. It's running cooler than it was yesterday. I'm getting better results when it shuts down. I don't know if it's right. But now my fans are cycling. I'm not blowing over. And a few weeks ago, as soon as I parked, I was blowing out my overflows, and it was sitting there boiling and boiling and bubbling down. It's not doing that now. Okay. Good night, y'all. You know the drills. Everyone have a great one. Hope your projects are going better than mine. Although, my projects aren't really that bad. My life's pretty good. Peace out. Everyone have a great one.